What if the person you trust the most was the very one planning your downfall? Not with a sword, not with a loud betrayal, but with silence, with a smile that hides a different truth. You know that feeling, don't you? When a colleague takes credit for your idea, when a friend shares the secret you thought was safe, or when someone close suddenly feels distant. It hurts, not just because of what they did, but because you trusted them enough to let them close. That's the real wound. Centuries ago, Machiavelli whispered a warning: trust is never absolute, it is always a calculation. And today, in our workplaces, our families, even our friendships, that truth feels more alive than ever. In the next few minutes, I want to take you on a journey. We'll uncover how betrayal begins. We'll learn how Machiavelli advised people to protect themselves. And most importantly, we'll see how you can turn betrayal into wisdom, into power. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may never look at trust in the same way again. And if you've ever felt betrayed before, leave me a comment with the word resilient. Let's see how many of us have walked this path together. Betrayal doesn't arrive like a storm. It doesn't kick down the door. It creeps in, quietly, almost invisibly, until one day you realize trust has been replaced by doubt. Think about it. Most betrayals don't start with one big, dramatic act. They start with small signals, whispers in the hallway, details left unsaid, a sudden change in behavior. Machiavelli observed this centuries ago. Those who plot against you rarely announce their intentions. They prepare the ground slowly, waiting for the right moment, and if you're not paying attention, you'll never see it coming. So how do we recognize it? There are 3 common signs. First, shifting loyalty. A friend or colleague suddenly praises you too much, flatters you in ways that feel unnatural. On the surface, it looks like kindness, but often it's a mask, a way to lower your guard. Second, strategic silence. Important details are left out. A teammate forgets to copy you on an email. A family member forgets to tell you about a decision that affects you. Silence can be louder than words. And third, convenient absence. When you truly need support, that person is suddenly unavailable. It's not an accident, it's positioning. Let me give you a story. A young startup founder trusted his co-founder completely. They built everything together, the late nights, the sacrifices, the dream. But over time, he noticed something strange. Investor meetings were happening without him. Emails were forwarded selectively. The praise grew sweeter, but the distance wider. By the time he realized, his partner had secured funding alone and left him behind. But betrayal isn't limited to boardrooms or business. Sometimes it lives inside the home. Picture a woman who confides in her sister about her struggles in marriage, only to find those same words repeated at a family gathering, stripped of compassion and turned into gossip. In that moment, she feels the floor drop beneath her feet, not because of the words alone, but because of who spoke them. Here's an image I often use. Betrayal is like a hairline crack in glass. At first, invisible, harmless. But over time, pressure builds, and that tiny fracture spreads until the whole surface shatters. By the time you notice, it feels too late. The lesson here? Betrayal doesn't explode, it unfolds. And if we ignore the signs, the damage cuts deeper. But here's the hopeful part. Noticing these patterns isn't about becoming paranoid, it's about becoming wise. By learning the anatomy of betrayal, you give yourself the chance to respond, not react, to see clearly, instead of being blindsided. So here's a small takeaway for you. Start observing, gently. Don't assume the worst about people, but don't ignore the signs either. Write them down if you need to. Patterns reveal more than words ever could, because once you can see betrayal forming, you can prepare. And preparation is the first step to power, which leads us to the next question. If betrayal can't always be avoided, how do we protect ourselves without building walls so high that no one can reach us? That's exactly what we'll explore next, through the lens of Machiavelli's timeless playbook. Betrayal may be part of human nature, but that doesn't mean we're powerless. Centuries ago, Machiavelli taught rulers something surprising. The strongest fortress isn't built of stone or steel, it's built of perception, boundaries, and strategy. So how do we protect ourselves today? Let's explore 3 timeless principles from his playbook. First, guard your information. Not everyone deserves access to your full truth. Machiavelli believed rulers should reveal only what strengthens their position, and the same applies to us. Think of it like this. Your personal stories, your struggles, even your future plans are valuable currency. Share them wisely. A simple practice is to test loyalty. Share something small, something harmless, and watch how the person handles it. If it comes back to you in another form, you've learned something vital before the stakes are too high. Second, diversify your allies. In politics, relying on one family or one army could mean disaster. In life, relying on just one friend, one mentor, or one colleague for all your support can be just as risky. Balance your circle. Build different layers of trust with colleagues, with community, with chosen family. That way, if one connection fails, your whole world doesn't collapse. I remember a nurse who shared her story. She used to lean heavily on a single coworker for emotional support, but when that coworker began spreading her words as gossip, she felt crushed. Over time, she rebuilt a broader support system. Mentors, friends outside work, even a professional counselor. It didn't just protect her from betrayal, it made her stronger. Third, make betrayal costly. Machiavelli warned that love alone is fragile. Respect and even a measure of fear create stronger protection. What does that mean for us, not as princes or rulers, but as everyday people? It means setting boundaries so clear, so firm, that others know crossing them will come with consequences. At work, it might mean documenting your contributions so credit can't be stolen without exposure. At home, it might mean calmly but firmly naming when a boundary has been crossed and showing that you won't let it slide. When betrayal is expensive, fewer people are willing to risk it. Here's an image I want you to picture. Your trust is like a vault. If you hand out the key to everyone, don't be surprised when the treasures inside go missing. But if the vault is well guarded, if every key is earned, your treasures remain safe and more valuable. And here's the gentle truth. Practicing these strategies isn't about becoming cold or untrusting. That balance is what keeps you safe and still open to connection. If this resonates, type the word boundaries in the comments. Let's see how many of us are ready to guard our trust with wisdom. But what happens when the unthinkable occurs? When protection isn't enough, and betrayal breaks through anyway? That's where Machiavelli's guidance becomes even more surprising, because sometimes the wound itself can be transformed into a weapon. So let's move forward and explore how betrayal, once it happens, can be turned into power. Betrayal hurts. It leaves us shaken, doubting ourselves, wondering if trust is even worth it again. But here's the truth Machiavelli would remind us of. The wound of betrayal doesn't have to be the end. In the right hands, it can become the very thing that strengthens you. Think of betrayal like fire. It can burn you down to ashes, or if you step wisely, it can forge you into steel. The fire is the same. The difference is what you do with it. So how do we turn betrayal into power? There are 3 ways. First, expose with timing. When you've been betrayed, your instinct may be to react immediately, shout, confront, or demand justice. But timing is everything. Machiavelli taught that truth revealed too soon is wasted. Wait for the moment when exposing betrayal brings maximum clarity and leverage. Take the story of a woman in a corporate office whose colleague repeatedly stole her ideas. Instead of lashing out in the meeting, she quietly documented everything. Emails, drafts, timelines. When the stakes were highest, in front of leadership, she presented her full record. Not only did she reclaim her work, but her credibility soared. Second, redirect the wound. Betrayal creates pain, yes, But pain is energy. You can choose to turn that energy into resentment or into fuel. Think of Abraham Lincoln, who filled his cabinet with political rivals. Instead of letting their opposition weaken him, he redirected it into strength, using their ambition to push his presidency forward. In everyday life, this might look like channeling betrayal into building new partnerships, new skills, or even a stronger identity. One father once told me how his teenage son betrayed his trust by lying about grades. He could have let anger destroy their relationship. Instead, he redirected that wound, turning it into a deeper conversation about honesty, fear, and support. The betrayal, painful as it was, became a bridge to a stronger bond. Third, embrace silent advantage. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all, at least not right away. By letting someone believe they've won, you create space to reposition yourself quietly. I knew of a small business owner whose partner cut him out of a major deal. Instead of chasing the loss, he stayed silent, restructured his contracts, and built alliances elsewhere. 6 months later, his former partner came knocking for help, but the power dynamic had shifted completely. Here's the key lesson. Betrayal doesn't define you. Your response does. Every act of betrayal can either shrink you or sharpen you, and the difference lies in whether you let the wound close bitterly or whether you allow it to become a scar that reminds you of your resilience. So if you've been betrayed at work, in friendship, or even within your family, remember this line: betrayal is not the end of trust, it's the beginning of wisdom. If you've ever taken a setback and turned it into strength, share one word or stronger in the comments. Your story might be the reminder someone else needs today. And now, we arrive at the heart of this journey. We've explored how betrayal begins, how to protect yourself, and how to turn wounds into wisdom. But there's one final step. How do we carry this forward into our lives, without living in fear, but with clarity, strength, and hope? That's what we'll discover next, in the emotional conclusion to this journey. We've traveled a long road together, from recognizing the whispers of betrayal to building protection around your trust, to transforming wounds into wisdom. And now we stand at the end of this journey, with a simple but powerful truth. You cannot stop betrayal from existing, but you can stop it from controlling you. Here's what I want you to carry with you. Trust doesn't have to disappear. It just needs to be guided by wisdom. When you set boundaries, when you protect your truth, when you learn from scars instead of hiding them, you become unshakable. Think back to the young manager we met at the beginning, the one blindsided when her idea was stolen. In time, she rebuilt her influence, this time with clear boundaries and stronger alliances. Betrayal didn't end her story, it sharpened her. And maybe you have your own version of that story, a time when you were hurt, disappointed, even broken, but somehow you rose. Maybe not right away, maybe with pain, but stronger, clearer, wiser. That's the emotional payoff, realizing that betrayal doesn't mark the end of trust. It marks the beginning of your wisdom. So here's my invitation to you. If this message resonated, leave one word resilient in the comments, because resilience is not about never falling. It's about standing up each time a little stronger. If you want to keep building this strength, if you want to learn timeless strategies from history's sharpest minds, make sure to subscribe, because in the next video, I'll share Machiavelli's secret on how to become the most dangerous person in the room without ever raising your voice. Betrayal may break your heart, but it does not have to break your spirit. And when your spirit remains unbroken, there is nothing you cannot overcome.